3 years ago at Google I/O, I went to a workshop about developing apps for developing countries. And in that workshop, they gave you a phone device. And in that device, there was an app that was showing how much data do you consume doing anything. And then they gave you several tasks, like Google instructions to go that place, or find out the translation of that word, or how to cook something, and so and so. And then it showed how much data did you consume. Then it showed the price of this data in different developing countries. And then it showed what can you buy for this amount in different countries. And this was pretty surprising for me. I was aware that internet is a problem in many places, but putting an image or a face or a price tag to this was very mind-blowing for me. It showed you how for 100 mega in one place, you can buy food for a week. And it introduced me to this dilemma that people sometimes have, that you have to choose whether to get access to knowledge or food. And this stayed with me very heavily after the conference, and I started reading and searching about this, and I started doing all kinds of projects and started doing talks about this. And fast forward to today, or to 2 months ago, I quit my job. I'm no longer in a just like your schedule says. I'm no longer a backend developer. I am a co-founder of a company called Quanta that is based in Nairobi, and that it does my take on trying to help and solve this problem. And in this talk, I will introduce you to some background information and some important information that I think you should have if this is interesting for you and if you want to try and give it your take. And I'll share some of my challenges that I experienced along the way so far. If there's anything you find interesting, this is my handle. This is the handle of the company. And please feel free to tweet. I'm happy to share the word. Not only about what I do, because maybe it's a bit less relevant here, but just about this project and about this challenge. And I think the more people will put their hands on it, the better the situation will get. So this is the world map, as you all know, and science school. And this is the route that I made a few days ago from Nairobi to Casablanca. That was short, that was a bit over 8 hours flight. Not very easy, but it was nice because there were not many people on the plane, and I got like a row and I could sleep and everything. And then another connection of 3-ish hours from Casablanca to Amsterdam. And the reason I'm going to finish this talk slightly earlier today is because I have to fly to the US soon at 12:30. And if you want to see if I make it, follow me on Twitter. I really hope I will. So what's interesting about this is that this is Casablanca to Nairobi to Casablanca, 8 hours. Amsterdam, 8 hours and something will get you to New York. This, I don't know if you can see it, but this arrow is actually bigger than this arrow, even though that allegedly both are 8 hours. And well, it's not cool because it makes my effort look not so serious, right? So the reason to this is projections. Taking a 3D sphere, projecting it on a surface, will make you lose some information. And then the question is, which information are you going to lose? And XKCD has an awesome comics about this, and introducing some of the different projections. And if you want to know more about them, it's number 977 on XKCD. Look it up, it's really cool. A good way to avoid this problem of what information you're going to lose is obviously Flat Earth. You should join them. They have members all around the globe. The reason that we all know that the Earth is not flat, and like the one killer argument, is that had it been flat, cats would have dropped everything off it. Luckily, we still have stuff here, so obviously Earth is not flat. So, Gale-Spitter's projection. And that's a more interesting one. This was introduced roughly 300 years after the Mercator projection, which was the one on the map that you saw in the beginning. What's good about it is that it shows the area of the continents correct. And what's bad about it is that it makes Europe look not so nice. Given we all know that most of the maps and books and stuff in the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th century were printed in Europe. It's pretty clear why this was not chosen, and this was chosen, right? Like, looks nice and impressive and everything. But this is the real area of the continents. And this 8-hour flight is no longer like my allegedly 8-hour flight, but like this one. So 8 hours. Some more numbers about how big Africa is. It has almost the same number of countries as Europe, but it has also almost double the area of Europe. Generally, if you take the area of America, which is in this case is North America and Central America, based on what Wikipedia says, and add to it the area of Europe, you roughly get the area of Africa, slightly less. So that's how big Africa is. Another interesting number that I want you to have in mind is this, languages. So in North America and Central America, officially you have 4 languages, and you know that generally English and Spanish will get you by through most of the areas. Officially, there's like 300 languages because it includes stuff like Azteki and other small tribal languages. In Europe, there are 24 languages and official 200 languages, also because of all kinds of small minorities. But yeah, if you want to take your app and make localization to it, English will get you by. If you want to take the extra mile, 20 languages will get you by. What's up in Africa? 20-something official languages, 1,200 to 3,000 unofficial languages. Why is this number so varied? Because many people or the researchers still couldn't decide what's a dialect, what's a language. But even in countries like Kenya, which is big and advanced fairly, there are 1 or 2 official languages, English and Swahili. But if you want to talk to tribes and people outside of Nairobi and outside of Mombasa, you're going to need like 20, 30 languages. And so it's fairly hard, this communication thing in Africa. But don't forget this number, we'll go back to it. One last slide about how big Africa is this one, and I love it. We take China, we take the US, we add India, some parts of Central South America. We add most of the European Union. We add some Asian countries, like Bangladesh, and then we see we still have some change. So the point is Africa is a huge continent. And to put enough hardware to make the internet available there is a big effort. It's going to cost lots of money. It's going to take lots of time. There are some initiatives that are doing this. There's Project Loon by Google. This is a hot air balloon that projects Wi-Fi around it. There is Project Link by Google that is simply, let's put lots of money and put hardware everywhere. But even for companies like Google, it's going to take time. There is this interesting software solution by Facebook that used to be called internet.org, and now it's Free Basics. And it's a set of websites that you can apply, and then this will be accessible without internet in chosen areas in developing countries. A big downside of this is that while Wikipedia is obviously there, Google is obviously not. Some more cool hardware is those drones, Aquila and Skybender by Google and Facebook, of course. And they're being fed from solar energy, and they also project Wi-Fi around them. While those are cool projects, they're obviously not sustainable for long term. How many drones and air balloons can you possibly have in the air to solve this internet thingy? So I want to go with you together over the history of the internet and figure out what happened, what went wrong along the way. And for this, I will need your attention. That's lots of small letters. It's not going to be maybe easily visual to see. I'm going to go over all of this. Be attentive. So we start. 1970s, ARPANET has 70 nodes. This is the army network of the US. In Africa, quiet. 1980s, in globally, with the first ISP is being set up and TCP/IP is being formalized. While in Africa, still nothing happens, but regarding Africa, the UN sets up PADIS, which is an organization that aims to essentially have Africa connected. Moving to the second half of the century, the first internet networking system in South Africa is being set up, while globally AOL kicks in, personal computers kick in. Small gap. 90s. Email is being set up in 18 institutes, and this is FidoNet. While globally, World Wide Web starts. Second half of the century, internet connection. While in the world, or anywhere outside of Africa, Hotmail, Google, PayPal, and ICANN. Who in the crowd knows what ICANN? Raise your hand. It's an organization that essentially allocates IPs to people in the internet. Jumping to the second half of the century, first major internet connection to the continent. It happens via France. So all the Saharan or the North African countries start getting their connection through France. Sub-Saharan, silence. While in the outside world, Skype and Pirate Bay, which are both fairly heavy on data, kick in. So the gap is already getting fairly bigger. Second half of the century, of the decade, Afrinic is getting the permission from ICANN to register and manage IPs in Africa. While globally, we have Reddit, we have YouTube, and we have smartphones. How big is the gap? Fairly big so far. 2010, the high-speed network reaches Africa, and 0.4% of the people have access to it. While in the world, Snapchat, Coursera, all the big, interesting stuff already happened, and now it's like small, good use cases. And second half of the century, that's my company. So we saw a gap was being created. We saw that computers, when they kicked in the global area, or globally, but not in Africa, so you see the ingredients to create this gap. There is the computers, internet, stuff happen. One more minute of attention, of good attention, another timeline heading your way. Number of private users of the internet. So 1980s, nothing in Africa, and globally, or mainly in the US, some army networks, some educational institutes, and even commercial institutes already have access. In the 90s, you can say it's roughly the same start, and some gap is starting, and then we move to the 2000s. That's already a big gap. And in 2005, a big landmark happening in Africa, that the sub-Saharan connections, so not the ones that are North Africa, 5% of the population gets access to internet. Globally, 1 billion people connected. That's a big gap. And, well, just gets bigger and bigger. All those numbers and others are from the Internet Society website. Super cool website. Go there, hours of fun. Mobile subscriptions number. This is an interesting slide, and it shows that the gap is actually way smaller. So around the 2000s, globally, smartphones started being adopted, and shortly after, in Africa, smartphones started being adapted. So it seems like this is the first place we don't see a big gap. What does it mean? So you know this term, mobile first, that it says that all of your cool devices eventually become one thing. And it all boils down to having your phone, and it means that many people recommend your product to be mobile first, which means make it first look good on the mobile and then on other things. In Africa, it's mobile only. no TV in many places, no desktop, very few laptops, not to talk about other devices. And yeah, that's a very interesting and new ecosystem. So let's say we want to develop for Africa, right? Which Africa you want to develop for? It's pretty varied. We have this amazing skyline, and we have kids learning at school with iPads. And then we have places like Kibera or villages that people live either in slums or in mud houses. Most of the pictures here I took myself. It's not something from 20 years ago from some UN report. People live like this every day. And when you develop, you obviously cannot develop for this people the same way you would develop to this people. So which Africa you want to develop for? Let's look at the demand. Medical, educational, obviously very nice. Religious. Have this in mind for the next few slides. I'm going to show you what does it mean and why is it interesting. Financial, also have this in mind. Going to tell more about this. Transportation. Uber is a thing in Kenya as well. For $3 to $10, it will get you from the airport to anywhere or from your house anywhere. And people are adopting this nicely. There are also lots of local competitors in every country. They have their own. And in some African countries, Uber wins. In some other African countries, actually, the local solution wins. It's interesting to see how it develops. Weather apps. This is really interesting for, together with agriculture, for all the farmers. It's important information, and finally, they can make good use of it to plan their crops. And then social media and entertainment. Everybody have Facebook, obviously, because it is Facebook. And sharing economy. There is sharing economy and there is sharing. And one popular app that I saw there is called FlashShare. And once you have it, you can send files to the people around you using Bluetooth. So it's awesome because you download an app in this Wi-Fi and then you go back to your friends and family. Everybody have their data plan off. Everybody turn on Bluetooth on, and then you download, and then you share the apps. You download it with all your friends. You just send the APK, and you don't need to have internet to have apps. It's cool because it gets more people access to apps. It's less cool if you want to have this as a metric, because you go to the Play Store, and the number of downloads went up by 1. But you see in your database like 10 new users. That's a challenge for you as a person who has an app, and that's a challenge for all the different Play Stores that want to offer good metrics to their developers. This is a screenshot, or 4 screenshots from a website called AppTrace. This competitor of AppTrace is called App Annie, and full disclosure, AppTrace belongs to my previous employer, Adjust, and the reason I chose screenshots from here and not from App Annie is that all the different countries that I wanted to see are free in AppTrace, while only a few countries are available in App Annie. And I wanted to show you not just the US. So what's common in the US, the top downloads in the last week? Snapchat, Spotify, WhatsApp, something with emojis. Same for the Play Store of iTunes. Instagram, Snapchat, Spotify, Netflix. Stuff that are fairly heavy on the data consumption. WhatsApp in Netherlands. Roughly the same. Stuff, WhatsApp, Netflix, something orange. You obviously seem to like to celebrate King's Day stuff. Cool. So, interesting thing that's maybe unrelated to this talk, but fun to notice, is this number. So apps that are released, so not update, but newly released over the last week are going really well in the Play Store, not good at all in the iTunes Store. The next slide will be Chad and Kenya. Before I show this to you, I want you to take a second to guess how it's going to look like. Before we go over the numbers, Who thinks it's Kenya? Raise your hand. Who thinks it's Chad? Keep your hands down. Which flag is this? If it's Kenya, raise your hand. So half of the people think it's Kenya, half think it's Chad, right? You don't have a I don't know option. So yeah, this is Kenya, this is Chad. So what's up in Kenya? Yeah, they have WhatsApp, they have Facebook, Instagram, Facebook Lite, Opera Mini, and of course Uber. What's up in Kenyan's iTunes store? Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Uber, Google Maps, Snapchat. I would say it's a bit similar to the US. Interesting. This app, which one is it? The Safaricom, is one interesting thing here. Safaricom is the biggest cellular network provider in Kenya and many other African countries. And it lets you, this app lets you buy data or SMS or phone calls or control your mobile budget through this app. Why is it so popular on the Play Store and not so much on the iTunes one? My speculation is that if you have an iPhone, maybe you're not originally from Kenya. Maybe you are, if you are from Kenya and have an iPhone, maybe you are in minority. What's up in Chad? Clean Master, free video calls, share it, Facebook Lite, Uber, UC browser. Besides Uber and Facebook, I must say I don't know lots of stuff here, but Clean Master I remember from my desktop. And in the Play Store, this is interesting. This says here, Coran traduit en français, le Coran. So those are apps that would read out verses from the Quran for you. I can tell you that in other countries, there's a similar version with the Bible in other countries in Africa. So remember the first time I saw this, it was pretty surprising for me because I couldn't imagine having this on my phone, but obviously my background is different. But if you'd ask me what app would be popular, religious would not be my first or 10th choice or answer. And the adoption rate, still the same. If you want your new app to be successful, you may want to have it on Android. Next slide, I'll show you Japan and Vietnam. I hope the answers about the flags will be better. So, in Vietnam, in the Play Store, Messenger, Facebook, camera, selfie-generic camera, and stuff like that. In the Play Store, we have Grab and Google Maps. Now, Grab, for those of you who haven't been in Vietnam, is a good competitor of Uber, and it lets you not only take a cab, it also lets you take one of those scooters and jump and go somewhere. And with the traffic in Vietnam, you want a scooter, you don't want a car. Does this suggest that most of the people here use it are not locals? Maybe. Japan. Most of the apps here, to be honest, I cannot read because they are written in Japanese. And that's another interesting thing. All the apps you saw from different countries were always named in English. Japan seems to have such a good market of local developers and local consumers that you wouldn't find too many familiar logos here, and you wouldn't be able to read what it says here. And that's maybe not developing countries related, but definitely is interesting. An example for an app that is very, very popular in Kenya and around the world is Impreza. So the official definition, mobile phone-based money transfer and financing service that allows users to deposit, withdraw, transfer, and pay with a mobile device. It's 10 years old, and it's doing crazy good. They have 19 million active monthly users. Their transaction per in 2017 is something that most apps can dream of. And their daily active users, their retention rate is amazing. What does it do, essentially? It's your bank. Many people in developing countries don't have a bank account. there are not too many banks in Africa, and many of the banks there would not give many people a bank account there because they're not credible or they cannot check them, or also because many of the banks tried and got lots of penalties from the general roof organization of all the banks for not being able to find money laundering that was going on again and again and again. And they get heavy fines for it, and then many banks figured it's not worth it. We'll just pull back. And so the bank or the financial situation in African countries is fairly challenging. And then comes Impreza and says, I'm not bank account, but you can put money in my account on your mobile number. And you can only open an account if you show your passport or ID. So it's definitely verified. And if you send money to someone using M-Pesa, you either go to the Safaricom app or you go on your phone settings to SIM applications. I don't know if many of you have been to a settings phone SIM applications menu, but there's nothing there. Except for this if you have a Safaricom SIM card, because the M-Pesa is kind of per default there. You just need to sign it when you get a Safaricom account. And then when you ride somewhere and you don't have cash, you pay with your M-Pesa. When you buy in the grocery store and you don't have cash, you pay with M-Pesa. When you're stuck somewhere and you don't have cash, you can ask your friends or family to send you money to your M-Pesa and you can pay. Recently, they opened savings account in your M-Pesa, and even more recently, they opened state bonds you can buy with your M-Pesa. So it's a whole new financial ecosystem in your mobile phone. And don't forget, this is linked to your phone account. So actually, only Safaricom users. So it's like saying Vodafone, maybe. Only the Safaricom users actually have access to this. And so it creates this interesting situation that many of the people I know in Nairobi have a SIM card for M-Pesa and a SIM card for wherever the mobile provider is that is way cheaper on the phones. Whoever thought this is a thing? Some pictures of M-Pesa that I took from my trips. This is, see if we can find the sign. It's hidden, I think, here. This one, it says M-Pesa. This is in the market in Nairobi, really in the area of the Kibera slums, on which you should all read, because UN is really focused on them. And this is the largest slums in Africa, and it's a very interesting ecosystem for itself. It's called Kibera. Yeah, so we saw that even this cool service is really reachable everywhere. Let's develop for Africa. So, okay, I quit my job and I went to develop for Africa, right? It's going to be cool. And I went to Kenya in the end of March, and I started a company called Quanta. And you can find stickers of ours just there if you want. It's with this cool C logo. I did not do this myself. And what Quanta, we defined it to do, is basically to be a tool for shop owners that they can open a shop inside the app, given they don't have access to regular tools, or maybe it's hard for them to find a designer, find a developer and such. So kind of really similar to what M-Pesa does. Make something that people need more accessible, right? And then we had this really cool mock-up of this is the app, and then you can buy stuff, you can send messages, and you can have your own store. And then I started going to different people, to different sellers, sometimes people in the crafts fair in malls, sometimes small tin stores in markets in less nice parts of Nairobi. And the number of challenges that I had is, wow. I was anticipating some challenges, but some stuff I couldn't completely expect to happen. So first thing, internet, right? Third of the people that I had there didn't have internet connection. I had to open a hotspot from my phone so they can download this and tell them next time you're on Wi-Fi, upload more stuff, change stuff in the store, manage it. Sometimes the internet connection is so bad that even if you have data, it's just stuck on the screen. and you and the person looking at the phone and like, well, is it going to download or is it not going to download? And you feel a bit uncomfortable, and you're like, well, this is my email. If you ever manage to download, please tell me. And then they manage to download, and then it shows that it's offline because it's a phone that's called Techno. And you're like, I don't know this company, I don't know this model, but it works on all the Androids of mine and my friends, but what is Techno, and how do I debug this? And then many of them are data again. You manage to have a store, and you have stuff there, and then you fail to download the image, and then it looks pretty bad, and you're like, well, there is an orange there, you can trust me, the person does sell oranges. And then other people open a store, but their phone is not good, or the camera is bad, and then they just don't even upload a picture because, it's not for the capabilities of their phone, let's say. And then you have other challenges like this nice mock-up, and I tell people, OK, so you open the store, great success, let's add items. And they look at me and like, where do I add items? I'm like, well, manage stock. I'm not sure what it means, is the answer that I hear. And then it's like, OK, so I should change the text to edit items, because this is more understandable for people. More challenges. This is a screen where you upload your stuff, and you can edit here. And then people look at this and say, wait, but I made a typo. Where do I edit? I'm like, click the pencil. They're like, huh? So this is, while it may be obvious for us that this is a pencil, it's not obvious for everyone that this is a pencil. Not to mention floppy disks. Don't even try. And yeah, to summarize some of the challenges that I had so far in my experience of developing apps to developing countries is data consumption is a big thing that stands in your way. UX is a challenge, not just because it's not what you're used to. Also, you have to remember you're designing for phones that are very different from what many emulators even have as an existing version. Localization is going to be a challenge because you need to translate to how many languages? 1,200 to 3,000? That's a number you remembered so far. Then the tools. Your PayPal integration or your pay with a credit card integration is not helpful. You need to integrate with Pesa or equivalent. And symbols, yeah. So that is it. Thank you. I hope that all of you will take from this talk the encouragement to go and explore this more and try to find more challenges and talk about this and bring this to people's attention. And please feel free to welcome and to follow me and to talk more about stuff. Thanks again.